What's going on, everyone? I'm excited to bring you guys this episode for the week with Nate Wiley. Now, I want to speak on this before you guys start to listen to the episode. This is not a controversial episode, but what I want to say is that a lot of the topics that we talk about are our opinions as to what goes into this industry of tech, or for me, what went into me diving into tech. So please, there are a couple of things I've said in there, like, hey, you don't need certain things, you don't need to focus on this, you don't need to focus on that. If you feel strongly about focusing on one area versus the other, that's fine. Would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on everything. But remember that these are just thoughts, opinions of what my journey is, and thoughts and opinions of others that work for them. Your journey and path may be different every single time that you try to do something compared to someone else, and that isn't necessarily a bad thing. The point of this episode and all other episodes is to help you just kind of get an idea of which direction to go in. And then, of course, if you do pick a direction that is similar to ours, ask us questions and we can provide any kind of insight, or at least more so the guests that I have on here rather than me, as I'm new to this space. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode and hope to see you engage with it, share it. If you found some valuable information on this, let us know what it was, or let me know what it was, and we'll continue diving into these kinds of topics. Yo, what's going on, Podaholics? Bringing you a new episode with Mr. Nate Wiley. Definitely excited about this one. Podaholics Season 2, if you guys haven't already picked up on it, and as I introduced it in the first episode, is definitely going to be more guided towards tech, choosing a new career path for me. Like I said in the first episode, it's definitely more so a journey kind of season rather than a do as I say kind of thing. So take everything with a grain of salt as these episodes come about. There is no like last season, it was definitely like me being a mentor, showcasing what we've done in the fitness space, where I could give you some more concrete value to kind of expand on your business that you had or that you currently have, maybe if you're still listening in the fitness space. But for the most part, this season is just documenting my journey in the tech space. So I'm going to bring people like Mr. Nate here to share some knowledge, share some value, and then hopefully, when we end this season in the future, I can grow as well as you guys with these episodes that we bring. So nonetheless, let's get started. Mr. Wiley here. I met him at TechpreneurCon via the Tech is the New Black platform with Cyrus Harbin. If you guys aren't familiar with that name, definitely look it up. But I attended this in Atlanta. We met, and actually Nate just sat down at my table. He's like, anybody sitting? He just sat down, and I'm sitting there smashing on some wings. And yeah, I mean, now we're on this episode today, and we're going to talk about some mindset things that I think we kind of started a conversation the other day, him and I thought it'd be a good idea to expand on it a little bit more. But Nate, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick and let everyone know. I'm sure that a lot of people that are going to listen to this are from the weekend, but also some other people that I know listen to this episode. They could probably make use of a good introduction. So go for it.
Awesome, man. First of all, definitely thank you for taking the time and for wanting to link up like this. As you said, we kind of just met by happenstance and ran into each other at the conference, but I love to run into folks who have similar mindsets. And as you mentioned, we've already had a nice little chat post conference and saw there was some good synergy there. So glad we were able to throw something on tape here. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nate Wiley. I'm a talent acquisition professional right now. Currently, I am a consultant primarily for startups, working with 3 different startups right now. A couple of small businesses I do some perm placements for, but been recruiting going on about 12 years now, all kind of different industries. Got my start in staffing, worked for a couple of staffing companies. Then I moved in-house for a distribution company. Then I went manufacturing. Then I went tech for a large part of my career and been in the tech startup space since then. But yeah, man, happy to chat with you and let's talk some things through.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting. Nate, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit here. You keep calling yourself old, man. And every time we chat, you're like, man, I'm too old for this. I'm too old for that. Man, you don't look a day over 30. Like every time I look at you, I'm like, where does he get this old thing from? But the 12 years in the industry definitely trumps anything I have or have had going on. I was only really in the fitness space for 10 years. So it's really cool, man, that you've been in that space for so long. I admire things like that. Um, but to kind of go into today's episode, we wanted to chat a little bit about mindset behind transitioning career paths, specifically this tech space that is becoming very popular. It seems like, or maybe I'm just late to the game, and maybe I caught kind of the wind of the peak of it. I don't know. Nonetheless, this weekend showed me that a lot of people are either very confused, very curious, interested, motivated, demotivated, all the words about what goes into transitioning into this new career path, either mentally or on a more tangible level, skillfully. And while I don't have a lot of experience in this field yet, I have found myself thinking, I don't know that that's necessary when people say, hey, I'm thinking about doing XYZ to dive into tech. And then they give me like a list of 15 things. And I'm just like, I don't know, just because I got hired in November for my tech position, and then started in January. Right now it's May 7th, the day of the recording, right? But I'm just looking at it, I'm like, I don't know that all of we're talking about boot camp after boot camp after boot camp after Udemy course after all these other things, and it's just like, man, I feel like that's kind of hurting. So my first question to you is, what are some commonalities that you see in people that hurt them rather than help, especially coming from unrelated fields? And it could be an expansion on this list of like 15 different things, or it could be other things. Again, what are some commonalities that you see in people that hurt more than help, especially coming from different fields when wanting to pivot from, XYZ to tech?
That's a great question. Something I see more oftentimes than not is the easiest way I can say it is that they don't see the value in what they're currently doing or what they currently know.
Mm-hmm.
I think not a problem, but something that I've pointed out a couple of different times. Because honestly, until probably like last year, maybe early summer, really when I started watching like Cyrus's podcast, Tech is New Black, and that just sort of expanded into me delving into a couple other things. It's like, oh wow, like this is like a thing now, like this is trendy. Like it's before then it was just work. And I've said that to several people. As a recruiter, I've always liked to enjoy talking about it and learn about what people do, but it was work. Like people didn't necessarily want to talk about it when they got off. Like a job's a job. It's
Yeah.
kind of the mindset, right? And so now
Yeah.
that people are flying into a different city and spending 2 days to learn about work, is just like, okay, so there's a lot of appetite for this now. But I think the part that people are missing is again, I'll repeat this and probably until the day I die. Like it starts with that self-assessment piece. Um, Everyone is seeing like this shiny thing and hearing that, okay, tech pays this amount, you get to work from home, you get a laptop, it's trendy, all that kind of stuff, and not really taking it into account. Like, okay, but I've been doing this other thing for 3 or 4 years. I don't want to just. I think people are looking to kind of brain dump that and just learn something new as opposed to building on top of the experience that they already have and
Yeah.
finding the tech connection
Yeah.
and be able to say like, hey, I've been in customer service for 5 years. Like I've led a customer service team And honestly, I've talked to several people. They don't even think about like every app, every tech company, like the customer service part, the customer support team is huge.
Hmm.
Like that's a major part of the business. And so if you already have some relevant experience in that, like why are you, hesitating or considering taking this boot camp that's going to
Hmm.
completely, be a left turn from what you actually know and
Yeah.
are skilled at. And so
Hmm.
I think that's probably like one of the biggest commonalities I see is people not even valuing the education or the experience or
Yeah.
the career path they've already been on, and they just
Hmm.
want to like take this hard turn into something brand new,
Yeah.
versus being able to walk into the tech space already understanding a problem that they're looking to solve or an industry they're looking to disrupt, and then you can be of more value that way
Hmm.
versus trying to enter in through a point where you know nothing and you're just starting off green.
Oh man, you know what? I'm gonna say this, and maybe I'm gonna hurt some feelings on this. And this is something I did, and I honestly, looking back on it, I wish I had not done it. Um, so I took a sales engineering boot camp. The sales engineering boot camp did not break me into tech. I mean, I specifically asked
Right.
um, questions around that, and they just didn't care. My previous history on the agency stuff that we chatted about, which was hiring appointment setters for fitness businesses and things like that, is what got me my account executive position for a software development company.
Because it was
Um,
relevant experience.
because
Yeah.
it's relevant. So, um, it, what do you think? Just from knowing that, at least for me, what is that bridge then? And I can chime in just what I think as well to expand on my thought there. What do you think that bridge is? And what I mean by that is if I'm, let's say, a nurse, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I want to break into tech, and I'm not saying speak directly to nurses. This is more so just like an example. But if I have skill sets of talking to people, caring, being very customer service oriented, and I hear that there are things like, for example, sales engineering. There's coding boot camps. I'm not shitting on. By the way, I'm not shitting on like boot camps and things like that. I'm saying like I wanted to break into tech. I had a lot of sales experience, and then I took this like more technical boot camp, and I don't think it helped me. If anything, it just was like it was a tick forward in at least my knowledge, but it wasn't a tick forward in getting the job. But what is the bridge between going from nurse or whatever career to breaking into tech, and how should we identify that a little bit more clearly in this, rather than just saying look at the strong suits that you have already and then double down on that, which will be something else that we'll talk about here in a second.
I think firstly I would say it may not be a bridge. Like it might be a trail that then you have to wade through a river, and then there's a bridge, and then you got to climb up a little hill. Like to be honest, like sometimes I think people are looking for that direct route. Like, okay, I'm doing
Okay,
this. How do
that's
I get
yeah.
there? When it's really kind of you have to kind of take small steps, and then over time you've seen that you've made a turn in your
Hmm.
career. You started off doing this one thing, and now you're doing this other thing. Um, to use the example of a nurse, it may start with them being a nurse and then understanding like, okay, like what do I value most? Like nurses,
Hmm.
from my understanding, make pretty good money, but it's
Hmm.
also a lot of long hours being on your feet.
Hmm.
Maybe you don't want to be in a hospital setting. Like maybe there's
Dealing with
something that's
certain
starting.
people that you don't want to deal with
Right,
on a daily basis.
right. So now you have to figure out, you know, are you looking to, just change your industry? Maybe you love healthcare. Maybe you love, working with patients, but the hours just don't work for your schedule. Your
Hmm.
family's growing, whatever. And so you need to kind of start charting that part out. Okay, like
Hmm.
how do I, um, use my knowledge as a nurse, my experience working in hospitals, working closely with doctors. Like these are all things that someone probably isn't putting a lot of thought and value in. But the fact that you know how doctors operate, how they think, what they like, what they don't like, there's a company out there looking to sell products to doctors that you would be, a great fit to plug in, especially
Okay. Yeah, I see.
if you if you have a good personality, you're very comfortable in front of people, you know how to explain maybe more technical concepts in a
Hmm.
simpler way for other people to understand. That's how you kind of start to put all these pieces together. So that's what I mean by, it may not be a direct bridge, but maybe there are certain paths that you take until you get to that bridge. But what you want to do is start moving in that direction, and really learn as you go, and start to understand what other career fields are out there. One thing I've seen to be true for a lot of industries is sort of like the industry you fall into early is all you know. Um, you should see me trying to explain a corporate environment to a teacher or to a nurse or something like that. Like they can't even, like, what do you mean? Like they kind of aren't understanding, you know, Zoom calls and days off and reports and all these different systems that we're logging into. Because literally, they teach students, they put together a curriculum, they meet with parents, they're off for the summer, and then they do it again. Like it's just kind of, that's the
Yeah.
environment. Like they don't get promoted year over year and that type of stuff. Like it's literally the same job. And so then when I started to tell them, like, hey, you should look into being a learning and development specialist. Like, oh, what
Yeah.
does that do? It's like, it's essentially a teacher in a corporate environment. Like you're just teaching adults. And then that kind of gets their wheels turning about how they may be able to transition into a role like that. But it's usually not a direct, I'm doing this at A and then I'm gonna go do this at B. Like there's usually some stops in between, and then you just kind of start to put those pieces together and learn what other opportunities are out there that are aligned with the skills that you have, and then maybe aligned with what your work style is. Because everyone's
Yeah.
not looking to, put all the time and effort in that a tech startup may require as well. So there's a lot of different variables involved.
I like that answer. But by the way, as soon as you got in a few sentences, I like that you're very transparent about all this. This podcast is not meant to be nice. It is meant to for sure test you a little bit. And when you started saying like it's no bridge, it may be a river, a few rocks, a few boulders. You gotta swim through some of it. You can walk through some of it. Like there might be a crocodile. might be all kinds of crazy stuff in the middle of it. I just want you guys to know as well that while he's saying this of like I thought of the bridge, at least now, that a mentor is kind of like a bridge in a sense, because what you said right now was you gave an idea of a position that someone with no tech boot camp or tech skill sets can dive into, and that can be an answer for somebody. Let's say there was a big audience for podaholics right now, and there was
Mhm.
some teacher out there that could have been an extremely valuable lesson right there, and an extremely valuable idea where it's like you go look up these positions, and then all of a sudden you get like into this rabbit hole in the internet where you look at positions that look like positions similar to the one that you were
Yes.
looking for, and then it becomes this like, oh wow, I didn't know this, because that happened to me as well. Whenever I told Cyrus this weekend or that past weekend that I didn't know a single thing about any of this. Like I followed him because of his comedy on his page, and then my wife is a solutions consultant for another company, and she was talking to me about changing jobs and things like that. And actually, before she got this job, she was working for government, and I saw this thing called sales engineer, and then I actually saw it after following, so I didn't even follow him for the sales engineer stuff. And then I sent her the page, and then it just became like looking into it. And then I found out about BDRs and SDRs. I mean, months later, had no idea that I had been hiring like 60 plus SDRs, but we just called them appointment setters. So I didn't know any, I just didn't know the terminology. And then after finding out about SEs, found out about AEs and all this other stuff. I even interviewed, funny story, I interviewed for a company that a friend told me about when I was really looking to transition out of just like fitness coaching and going into the agency space. It was a tech company that aligned well with the stuff I was doing with the agency, and I applied. And I remember telling the guy, I was like, hey, so my friend told me that you guys have like this position called an AE. I'm not really sure what that is, but it sounds like me. Like all the qualities that AE have, like I do this over here. So, you know, they didn't end up hiring me. They hired somebody else for whatever reason, right? But it is very cool for you to say, you know, like, hey, this is where you're at, and here's a suggestion. I think the bridge is the conversation with someone who's in it, not just the boot camp first, right? But again, don't sit there having too many conversations. At least, like, you know, some people get caught up in like waiting and never take any kind of jump. So like for me, I said earlier, like I didn't get hired for the sales engineering boot camp, but it was a tick forward. It may have not been a tick forward for the position, like I said before, but it was a tick forward to get me a better understanding of which direction to go in next. So it wasn't a terrible thing, but I didn't stay stagnant, right? I didn't just sit on it. You know, you look like you were gonna.
That's a very that's a great point to make. And I, to your point, like that's what I see also. Like someone is literally sitting around waiting on someone to give them this foolproof blueprint of how to level up, or how to get a certain type of position, or how to make a certain amount of money. What I enjoy about having these sort of conversations with so many different types of people, and I think I'm also very fortunate to have been a recruiter for so long, because I don't think people realize how many of these conversations I've had long before I thought about, recording podcasts or sitting on a stage or whatever it may be. Like, this is just work to me. Like, literally, a phone screen is me talking to someone. Hey, walk me through your career. And so I've heard literally thousands of stories now of how someone got to that point in their career. And so all the different pitfalls that they may have had, or why a certain role didn't work out, or how they landed in this position, or how they was able to transition into a different role. Like, I've just kind of been collecting all these stories over the years, and that's really what I'm speaking from, in addition to like my own career and how I've been able to navigate. But a lot of my own decisions are not just from me always wanting better for myself, and really just understanding how to optimize whatever opportunity I feel like is being put in front of me. But hearing from all these different individuals and learning that a lot of them got to where they were because they knew someone, or they gained a certain skill set that was valuable, or they took the job that no one else wanted and it turned out to be a great opportunity for them, or they had to move. Like, there's no one way. And I think that's what I try to tell people. Like, don't get caught up just because that person took a boot camp and now they're doing great. It may not work for you like that. Like, I'm not saying don't take the boot camp,
it
but
may not.
That's not a guarantee, right? Like, that's just one thing that you can do to move in the right direction. But who knows what other variables may come into play
exactly
for you.
Exactly. I'm a living testament of that, right? Like, the sales engineering boot camp was not the thing, and it still really isn't even a topic of conversation. Like, I've had some people reach out via LinkedIn for other like tech positions and things like that. I'm not leaving my position, nor am I interested in transitioning to other places that are very similar, if not any different, right? But none of them ever bring up like, hey, I noticed your sales engineering internship from XYZ place. So to expand on one more thing is, like, I've gotten some questions recently just from a few people. And guys, by the way, when I say like I've gotten questions, I'm not sitting here like Nate. I don't get hundreds of questions over years. This is just a few people. Right. But I have gotten some questions because from the weekend and just from connecting with people on LinkedIn, it is very clear that I am in tech and people want to get into tech. So they started asking me questions, and they asked me, what's kind of like the number one thing, or what's kind of like the big thing that you would recommend? I don't know that there's one big thing, at least even for me, there's not one big thing that was like, this is why I was able to get the interview. No, I mean, fuck, I applied to so many places, and sat there. I made 5 different resumes. I don't even remember which one I sent over to the company I work for now. And it, it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, to go on a little bit more on the skill sets. And I think we've kind of already touched base on this, but I wrote down, I was like, lots of conversation around developing more skills that aren't in the wheelhouse. So like, let's say you're a salesperson like me, and I'm currently doing like a web development bootcamp. Now, mind you, I'm already in the position. I didn't start the web development bootcamp until I got the position. But talking about getting more skill sets to pivot, right? What are your thoughts on studying new skill sets while possibly already having transferable skills that someone could double down on in order to at least break in? And you've kind of already said that, but I see a lot of people, again, not doubling down. They don't necessarily do a brain dump. They use those skills, but don't use them to its fullest potential. Instead, they're doing, I'm going to go become a web developer, or I'm going to go do this QA thing. I'm going to go do this sales engineering thing. I'm going to go do this other thing. Somebody messaged me the other day, and he's like, I'm in this internship and I'm in this internship, and then I want to work this job on top of this. Literally, I'm like, wow, like you got so much going on. Like, why don't you just pick one? What's going on? Why just not double down on that one thing? If you want to speak on that.
Nah, that's a great question. I think simply put, like I always recommend to myself, and I always try to speak from that perspective. Like this is the way I think, in my opinion on things. You're never gonna regret getting smarter, right? Like whatever it is, I don't care if your job is sweeping floors. If you find a way to sweep floors twice as fast,
better than everyone else,
right? Like that's gonna be valuable somewhere. Like you're gonna be able to find a way to utilize that skill set in a way to turn a profit in some sort of way. And so people who already have a valuable skill set, let's just say is, you're great at Excel. I would encourage that person, okay, like take it a step further, like how push yourself past your own limits. I'm not the best at Excel or anything like that, but I try my best to, be comfortable with it. And sort of figure out what a lot of the bells and whistles do. And so if you already have a skill set that is that you have found is of value, figure out like what's that next step for that skill set. So like you may be learning SQL, you may be on your way to be a junior data scientist, something along those lines. Is what I would suggest for those individuals. It's all, I mean, the more tools and skills and knowledge you can collect, the better. Which kind of goes back to the previous conversation we just had a moment ago about not being one way forward. There are some people who, and I've hired them, they're not great at any one thing, but you can drop them into a problem and they can figure out how to solve the problem because they're good at a couple of different things. And then there are jobs where they couldn't tell you, shit about how to manage a program or be a project manager. But if you assign them one special focus within that project, they're going to kill it. Like that's what they're good at.
Yeah.
Like, that's what they charge people for. And so it's hard for me to always, give someone a very general type of advice. And it's really why I stay away from, posting videos or saying things like, say these 3 things in your interview, or say, I don't know who you talking to. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't, those 3 things may be, may fall flat as hell depending on who you're talking to. Like, they may not want to hear that from you. They may not care to hear that. Like, it's, there are certain ways to carry yourself that is going to be, pretty universally accepted. But I'm able to get into a conversation and feel people out like, okay, like you don't want to joke with me. Like you don't want to laugh. You want to get straight to it. Like you want to know exactly what I can offer you. Cool. I need to match your personality style, right? Like I need you to know that I can be what you need me to be. And then I get in some conversations that, I've been in some interviews that felt like a chit chat. And they want to offer me the job. I was like, you literally asked me nothing. I had like pages of notes ready to go. Like
that's so funny you bring this up because Cyrus posted about something like this today on his Instagram, and somebody had said, asked a question around interviewing, and he mentioned that one of the things that can be very difficult, at least in his opinion, was navigating that professionalism and also that like easygoing in the conversation, right, kind of thing. And yeah, to your point of like, you don't know who you're talking to, so it's or I don't know who you're talking to, so it's very hard to give you the best pointer. I think that that's kind of something that is just like on the fly. Preparation is always key. I think like having some questions of like, at least for me, just from going through interviews myself, um, and being the interviewee, I had a list of like 8 or 9 questions, and I had some relaxed ones, and I also had some more concrete ones. And actually, in the conversation, I remember scratching some of the concrete ones that are more like informational and very formal. I was like,
Hmm.
I definitely don't want to ask this because this is not the vibe of this conversation right now. And while I had seen some of these questions get posted on LinkedIn and other places I was like, I'm glad I didn't ask that, because it probably would have made the conversation a little too weird, given the
Yeah.
fact that they were very relaxed, blah blah, right? So I definitely think that that's huge. One thing I am curious about that maybe you got some insight on is, at what point in time when you've landed or you're trying to land something new, at what point in time do you focus your energy on your current skill sets rather than doing more of like, you're never going to stop learning and you're never going to hate learning, but at what point in time do you stop just doing extra things? Because there's only so much time in the day, there's only so much bandwidth in your brain that you can allocate towards whatever it is, right? But I guess stop wouldn't be the best word. Pause it for a little bit and focus on maybe what's in front of you rather than going and looking for something new to learn.
Nah, that's a great question. I like how you phrase that, and that's something that I've never heard mention of really. And I think you asked that question because you've been an entrepreneur. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's when, because honestly, that's when it sort of flipped for me. When
Mm.
I first struck out to be an entrepreneur and started my own consulting firm, oh man, like I didn't say no to anybody about anything. Like I'll
Mm-hmm.
do anything for anyone because I was just trying to get a ball rolling. Like I
Mm-hmm.
had really no momentum. I literally prepared myself financially, mentally, that kind of stuff to just jump, and we'll just
Yeah.
see if I can fly. Um, and so it did get to a point to where like literally I'm demoing all these different recruiting tools. I'm meeting with different companies about should I get a VA. I'm looking at
Mm-hmm.
different scheduling tools. Like I'm exploring all these different things, and honestly, it came to a point to where what was going to make me money. I already had. Like I already know how to recruit. Like literally,
Mm-hmm.
all I need is my LinkedIn account, my phone, and I can get to it. Like
Yeah.
that's really at the end of the day,
Yeah.
like that's kind of all I need.
Yeah.
And so all these other flashy items that I was looking into and exploring was honestly starting to take away from what was actually going to earn me money.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even taking courses on how to be a modern recruiter in 2023 and all this kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And what I learned
Mm-hmm.
for myself, and it varies for each person, you gotta again take your own self-assessment. A lot of these courses, don't get me wrong, like they're very informative, but oftentimes
Mm-hmm.
if you've been in a certain field for a while and you've actually been keeping up with the changes and patterns and trends and stuff, like they're really just refreshers. So like I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't necessarily sitting in on these courses or spending, I mean, some of them just depending are, from 1 hour to 12 hours. Like I was spending various amounts of time, just listening to these videos and taking little, end of course quizzes and stuff like that. It made me feel productive. Like it made me feel like I was getting things done. But at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
like, I wasn't a dollar richer, and so like at some point you got to figure out to like what you said, like I have to start applying what I do know. I have
I think
to I have to use those muscles in order to show people or show yourself, or hell, just to pay your bills. Like,
Yeah.
okay, like I need to make money off of what I already know, and then as I go, like you kind of you figure out those pit stops, we'll call them, to where like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like I got this figured out. I have some good momentum. I'm gonna find something to help me. Right now, my biggest issue is time management. Like I just have so many
Mm-hmm.
different things going on, and so when I have time, whether I'm in the car or something like that, like I'm listening to books on how to be more productive, like how to manage your
Mm-hmm.
time, like that type stuff. So you have to figure out like how do I plug it in, because if time management is my problem, I don't necessarily want to spend 2 hours a day reading about how to better manage my time. Like I need to use that time. And so
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so you just have to figure out like, okay, like what is one of my biggest challenges right now?
Yeah.
And how do I go about solving for it? And what does that look like? And
You know,
oftentimes you can just throw money at it, right? Like if there's
yeah.
something that I can just pay someone else to do, and they'll
Yeah.
free up my time and my brain space. Here, take
Mm-hmm.
this $200. Like, do it. Like, please. Like,
Yeah. Oh man, you brought up so many things. The I'm gonna tell you a funny thing. So I do everything on a little like notebook, and I write down the date, and then depending on how I think the day is gonna go, I write down three things. And this is just whenever I was doing the agency and coaching and all the other kinds of stuff. I would do sales. I would write down sales, I would write down marketing, and I would write down client delivery. And I would do like 4 lines in between. I'm like, okay, cool. What am I doing for sales today? What am I doing for marketing today? And then what am I doing for client delivery today? Right. And I still do that. And it would help me tremendously. Every single day I would know, like, oh, I obviously didn't do anything client delivery this day. So this week, a couple days ago, I decided to look into Notion and Motion. I don't know if you know what those two are, but they're
I use
essentially
Notion.
calendar kind of. You use Notion,
I've-
like
I have
Notion with an
used
N.
I have used Notion with an N. I didn't
Okay.
I didn't set it up in a way that to make it optimized for me, but I use
Okay.
Motion with an M
Cool.
because I have 5 different calendars and I needed one view.
Yeah. So, so I started using it, or tried to start using it, and then I found myself in a funk where I didn't get shit done for hours. Uh, completely counterproductive. And then I went back to my notebook, and I yesterday was so productive. and then on Monday, yesterday, Monday, I literally sent out 100 emails just to like, I set up some stuff on HubSpot and like added just a bunch of stuff, and I was productive. I was like, holy shit, I'm over here, worried about all these other skill sets, when in reality I kind of already have it. While Motion would help me out later,
Mhm.
maybe right now I should just double down on what I got going on, and then little by little I'll introduce it. But the one thing you said, it's like, when you see and feel momentum, I thought was a great answer for like, when do you put a pause on learning? And
Mhm.
sometimes people forget to kind of take a breather for a second and see that maybe they can get some momentum with something that they already have. And I feel like a lot of times, like I've had some whenever I was in my little sales engineering boot camp. Man, I don't want to downplay it. Whenever I was in my sales engineering boot camp, I don't want to say
said,
little sales, and
said my
that's
little
so
boot
terrible.
camp.
Yeah, my little. I don't want to downplay it like that. My bad. But whenever I was in it, I did do a good job with the demo and all that stuff, and I had some conversations going on, and I felt like a lot of people were already ahead of me with some of these boot camps that they had already done. And I'm like, guys, like, I feel like, I'm having some conversation with some recruiters and things like that, but you guys already have this other momentum going on with XYZ place. Why don't you like push on that instead of doing this? Like, why are you here? Essentially is what I was wondering. When you could have already been somewhere way further than I am. Um, this was before I got the job, right? But I felt that they already had the momentum, and now it seems like I have more momentum than they do now that I'm in it, while they are still in the same place. Now, look, the place that they were in is good. I'm not saying anything bad, but I know that some of these people wanted to pivot and wanted to do something different, and they're still in that same spot. While that same spot is great, I thought their interest was moving. So I think that the thing that ultimately boils down to immovable kind of place now is that they just didn't double down on that momentum. So when you do, at least from outside perspective and maybe a little bit of inside perspective, again, when you see and feel a little bit of that momentum, maybe push forward on that momentum, kind of like creating this like snowball effect of some sort, right? But yeah, that's kind of how I would put it in terms of just kind of like outward words. Let's shift a little bit here, and something I like talking to, at least the topic of like relationships, friendships, people around you. Um, a lot of times you get, I'm not saying you specifically, I'm just saying guys, girls in general, you get called an asshole, very stuck up when you want to make a pivot in your life, and then you eliminate certain friendships, certain conversations. Maybe you're not on social media as much as like on a friendly standpoint. Maybe you don't go hang out with family as much. That's something I want to talk to. And one other thing is social media. But let's actually talk on the social media aspect first. LinkedIn seems to have like a chokehold on everybody. Like I was saying, and having a LinkedIn is kind of like that cherry on top. It seems like create a good LinkedIn, and this is going to give you a job, or it's going to give you a good presence. And I'm not saying go create another social media profile, but I feel like people live two different lives on LinkedIn and then on their regular social media, right? And that their LinkedIn has to look a specific way, while their regular social media, Instagram, Twitter, or X, Facebook, and whatever other social media platform you may have. How often does that get looked into as a collective? Like, let's say you're looking to me for hire, and you're like, I'm going to go check out Kevin's LinkedIn, as well as his Instagram, as well as his Twitter. If you got on my Twitter, you would know that I don't put up with any woke shit. I'm anti-woke. I'm anti-woke. I'm not sitting there arguing with anybody, but you'll see my likes. I'm very anti-woke. I don't do well with any of that stuff. But how much does that play a factor in potentially getting hired? Do recruiters look at that? Do companies care for it a lot? Or is the chokehold real and everybody's kind of only looking at LinkedIn?
Again, it's hard to generalize, because it depends. So, if you're in a recruiting process with a smaller company, and you're working directly with the founder, or you're working directly with someone on senior leadership, they may have time, right? Like it's like if they're looking, they're not doing a ton of hiring. They like you, and they want to dig a little bit deeper. They want to dig a little bit further. Hell, they could just be a naturally nosy person, right? Like they may want to see like what is this person doing on the
Just
weekend,
go look.
right? And so I think that's what's so challenging about recruiting, as well as what keeps me so interested, is because it's just a people play on every front. Like it just, you don't know. The recruiter might be an asshole. The hiring manager might be an asshole. The candidate might be an asshole. like everyone's sitting there like trying to play a chess game with each other, right? And so I like to let both parties know, like, hey, I'm Switzerland. Like I'm not here to necessarily be an advocate for one or the other. I usually lean more towards being an advocate for the candidate, just because I know how sort of misguided recruiting processes can be if you just leave it up to someone who feel like they have so much authority. But to answer your question, I myself personally don't go digging into profiles and stuff like that, because I'm sure to me, like, I don't like doing that because it's one-sided, right? Like I don't like when I say I don't like it, but that's just the way the world works, and I want people to realize that as well. Like if you're interviewing for a job, and you want that job more than it seems like they want you. Not to say that they don't want you, but they know they're going to hire for that position. Whether it's you or not, is to be determined. But if they have the leverage, then they are able to pull more strings, and kind of be able to, like, we want you to jump through these hoops and do this assignment. We're gonna call 3 references, and I know someone that used to work with you at this other company, so I'm gonna call them, see what they say. Like I've seen them do all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
right? And they can do that, but I don't like that the candidate can't do that, right? Like let me call three
Mm-hmm.
people that used to work with you. Like why did they leave? Like
Mm-hmm.
why
Mm-hmm.
like so it's only one sided. Um and I do think, if you have I don't want to say questionable, but like if you're pretty, open on your link, not LinkedIn, on your social media accounts like an Instagram, Facebook, stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
you're saying things that could potentially keep you from employment, you should definitely lock it down.
Mm-hmm.
You should be a
Hey,
lot
some
more
people aren't even aware.
right.
Some
That's what I'm
people aren't
saying.
even
Like
aware that they're not acting right on their stuff.
I've seen several cases, not just recruiting, but just like internally
Mm-hmm.
of, individuals getting in situations because of something that they're saying on
Mm-hmm.
their social media accounts. And, several people at the company follow them and it gets called to attention like, hey, like this person thinks
Mm-hmm.
this way, talks this way, is saying these sorts of things. And, it's if they feel a certain way or feel like that's going to get, messy in the workplace, then it can get
Mm-hmm.
addressed. Um, but even LinkedIn, like LinkedIn is a lot more outspoken than what it used to be. Like at one
Mm-hmm.
point, they would roast you if you posted, like if you got married that weekend or something and you posted it, like this isn't professional. Like what does this have to do with work? And so now like
Yeah,
it's gotten a lot more lax. People
more
tend to
lax.
like to, see what you do on your personal time a little bit more. But yeah, when I first started recruiting, it was strictly business on
Now
LinkedIn.
it's I saw a post the other day talking about marriage, that you bring up marriage right now. It was like, just proposed this weekend. Here are 10 things that taught me about B2B sales. Like now people are like using every life event as a lesson for
Right,
sales.
right.
That's so funny, man. Yeah, I definitely think that that to a degree, by the way, you'll never find me arguing with anybody on social media. By the way, I may post some things, but I am not a texter. If you see me arguing with somebody on social media, I got hacked. I'm hacked. It's not me. But I would say I'm very chill when it comes to that. Yeah, the reason I bring that up is because I see people, having a good time on social media is one thing, but I definitely see other people like arguing, calling people names, certain statuses. For example, I saw a girl I know partner up with another girl in this business idea, and one of the girls was very professional. She would post about her business a lot, and you could see that she was building up this momentum. And then this other girl was constantly arguing with people, calling everybody the B word, or not literally everybody, but posting and saying, "Man, this B did this, blah blah. I'm gonna get back at her," all this other crazy stuff. And then eventually, they parted ways. There was no big announcements. The girl who was doing really well with her business continued and is still doing it, and I noticed the other girl was no longer part of it. And while this isn't corporate, this is just another kind of relationship that broke because of social media, and maybe other internal things, because obviously if this person is posting about it, they're probably acting on it in person as well. So I see things like that, and then I see other people wanting to break into corporate things, and they just continue acting a fool, and I'm just like, I wonder if this has any effect on, or maybe it's because I have you friended on here, and if I was your boss, I would be a little alarmed. But I've also not been in corporate America almost ever, so.
Definitely think it, that's what I say. It again, like there are so many different variables involved, right? Like your let's just be honest, like your political view or affiliation or something like that may
Mm-hmm.
turn off, you know, 80% of people, but it might be 5% that like the way you think. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they
Yeah.
they may want you at their company.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
so
Yeah, no, for
if,
real.
if who you are resonates with that one person and say, I want someone like that. Like
Mm-hmm.
and so it depends. I think for the most part, it really comes down to, again, like what do you yourself, value. Like I
Mm-hmm.
think as I grew in my career, as I got a little bit more confident, as I made more money, as I had more money saved, I might talk a little shit now. I'm not
Yeah.
as scared as I used to be. Like it's whatever. Like it
Yeah.
is what it is. Like I feel like I can hold my own weight now. Like I'm
Yeah.
never gonna be flat out disrespectful or
Yeah.
I'm always gonna lead with the laugh usually. Like I'm a
Mhm.
LOL on everything that I'm talking about, even if there's
Mhm.
somewhat of a serious undertone. But the people who just flat out are constantly being contrary or just picking fights or being a bully and things like that, like, and
Mhm.
they don't have you know uh a network of where they know they're always going to be employed or stuff like that. Like those are the type of people I just kind of question. Like you doing a lot. Like can you afford to like get fired or terminate?
To
Like
act the
like you
fool.
right, like
Yeah.
you doing a
Yeah.
lot. You know what I'm saying? Like it's some people
Mhm.
that sometimes I know they're just acting off pure emotion
Mhm.
because I mean we see it all the time, right? Like people get caught on camera and lose their job and you
Mhm.
know they know it's coming and what's the next thing you see? An apology video. Like, oh, I didn't mean it. I'm not like that. It's like, no, that
Yeah.
was you. Like now you're about to lose some things.
You know,
And
I was
so
thinking about things like this. Oh, sorry. So go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your thought there.
no, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was thinking about because I coach 9 and 10-year-old soccer girls, right? And this on Sunday we had a pretty intense game. The game was difficult. You could tell the girls were stressed. Our goalie was getting kicked. Our forward was getting beat up. Her hair was getting pulled. I mean, these are 9-year-old girls. Okay, so there's no malice here. It's just it's sports. Things are getting crazy, and I'm thinking, I'm like, when these girls get to high school and college, I just remember being in those positions where parents would get involved and they're yelling, and then the girls or guys are fighting, and then there's like actual like fights, you know what I mean,
Yeah,
over sports. And I'm not saying just soccer, I'm just saying sports in general. Um, and I'm like thinking, how can I maybe next time it gets, physical like this because the girls are complaining. They were like, man, that girl was pulling my hair. They were getting so aggressive. I'm sure the other girls are thinking the same thing too. Right. But how can you coach little girls like this to grow the mindset of like, don't do anything stupid because the moment something happens, if there's no going back on it, right?
mm,
What you may do, for example, let's say 2 more years happen and these girls are 12 years old or whatever. Let's say I continue coaching and I know that one girl is now coherent enough to understand not to fight, but she fights. And I remember, let's say I'm coaching her when she's in college, and I just so happen to be a college coach at that point. I'm gonna remember, like, hey, are you still kind of the girl or the guy that throws hands still, because those things that they still kind of I'm not saying blame little kids for that. Again, don't crucify me guys for saying here like they were kids, blah blah. I get that. I have almost 3 kids now. But it into adulthood, some of those things aren't necessarily taught to people, but it's like one of those things you wonder, not that we had to talk more about it, but how can you make sure that you are always on top of your personality as you continue to have an adjacent uh kind of lane of professionalism in your job and all these other things where it's not so divided by a median, right? Like what you
right.
do in your personal life is what is going to happen in your career. And I was just thinking, I'm like, man, these little girls, it's important for them to understand like it's getting aggressive, but don't do anything stupid. These little girls might be your teammate next year, and then all of a sudden you got this really bad energy with one another, and it's going to affect. And that is different for adults. But I was literally thinking about the same thing. I'm like, man, this happens to people in real life where they do
All the
something
time.
terrible, and then all of a sudden, so cool, cool, cool. Well, I got a couple of things. Last thing is inner circle specifically. Um, I think it was with you that I was talking about it with. Um, our inner circle is very important, and for me, I look at things in a couple of different ways. Like the bandwidth that you give to other people can be either energizing, like the mental bandwidth you give to other people, it can be very energizing. Like this is very energizing for me. I'm gonna walk away from this and think, cool, I'm more motivated in my career path versus maybe another relationship that I may have in my life might not be so energizing. It might be like, hey, come out and drink, or making a joke on me, or whatever the case may be. I'm not saying those things can't happen. Like, I'm not, again, if you're a friend listening to this, invite me to drink. You don't have to say, oh, I'm not inviting Kevin to drink. But like, how do you let go potentially harmful relationships, or how can you at least start thinking about this? Because I think we all have these in our life where we have some people that um aren't necessarily the best. But maybe we don't want to cut them off completely, but maybe we want to put some things at bay in order for us to advance in our career path. Um, it might be in your house. It might be in your household. Imagine you're doing a new
Exactly.
boot camp, or you're trying to study, and somebody's like up your ass, and you're just like, dude, I'm just trying to get better. Like, what's going on? Leave me alone. How do you combat some of these things? What advice do you give to people? Because I'm sure you've gone through it. Being as veteran in the field as you are, I'm sure you've had conversations with people who maybe you've introduced as a new friend, and you're like, that was a terrible idea. How do you let go of that person? It's just like, so many different things.
It's tough. It's tough. You have to. I would say you have to balance things, but I think ultimately you also have to just start to. I'm at one point. I just told myself like, all right, I'm gonna be selfish. I'm gonna just focus on myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't say that in a way like I'm not, taking care of people I love, or you can't call on me
Mm-hmm.
to help you or anything like that. But oftentimes I see
Yeah.
so many people get stuck in a place that they're trying to, pull everybody with them as they grow, as
Mm-hmm.
they level up. And it's okay to keep lines of communication open and things like that. But as as you find new interests, as understand like, okay, like this is the path I want to go, this is where I see myself, 1, 2, 3, 4 years from now, whatever. But as you try to make those moves and those steps, like you'll start to see, as you mentioned, like you only have so much time and energy for certain things. And so
Mm-hmm.
you really have to start to understand, what all am I giving my energy to, and which of those things aren't helping me. And then
Mm-hmm.
you kind of start to strip that away. And sometimes that's relationships, and that could be, friends, family, coworkers, whatever. And also, like I said, time management is something I'm struggling with right now. Like, does it make sense for me to spend an excessive amount of time, doing, you know I don't know, happy hours every day after work? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's certain times
Yeah.
you kind of have to get to a point like, all right, like if I'm really serious about what it is I'm trying to do, like I'm gonna have to take a step back and understand where am I actually putting a lot of my time and effort. And
Yeah.
usually that organically, that's going to start to people going to start saying like, man, I ain't seen you in a minute, especially if it's drastic, like especially if you always used to show up, or you always used to do this one thing and now you're not doing
Yeah.
it anymore. Like, that's going to stand out. And sometimes people don't take that in the best way, because
They'll make you feel bad for it
right, like
sometimes.
they want you to stay the way they like you. Like, hey, no, we used to have fun. Like, what are you doing? Like and so and they may not be ready to strip away that part of themselves, or dedicate that time to something different. And there may, become a little, I don't want to call it tension, because hopefully that's not tension, but sometimes that's what
Yeah.
it looks like. They'll just say like, oh, you changed, different, like that. And that's the goal. That's the goal. Like, I
That's
remember
the
at
goal.
one point in time I used
Yeah.
to always think that was such a negative aspect, but that is
Mm-hmm.
literally the goal. Like, everyone should be changing, everyone should be
Mm-hmm.
growing. Or else, like, I'm not gonna say what's the point, but is you I'm the type of person, like, I have to, while I have this time here, like, I have to know what I can accomplish. Like, I'm sorry, like, it would kill
Yeah.
me to live to be 80 and feel like I capped out when I was 30 something. Like, it's just like like,
Mm-hmm.
why didn't I keep
Mm-hmm.
going? Why didn't I keep trying? Like, why
Yeah.
didn't I, move here, do this, build that? Like, that's me. And that's not everybody. And
Mm-hmm.
and the individuals who think like that usually start to clink up or click up. Like, you'll see like new circles form, and and those are like your I don't want to say new friends, but new associates or new people that you prefer to be around, because I like the way you put it. You get energized by that. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
if you leave this group and you feel drained, and you leave this group and you feel like you can conquer the world, you want to start hanging with that conquer the world group.
Yeah, you want to start hanging out with this other group.
And that's usually just the way that plays out.
Yep, I agree. Um, to kind of wrap this up, it definitely goes into a little bit of like having or not having imposter syndrome. Whenever you're like, I don't know if I leave this group, are people gonna like me in this other group? Look back and listen to everything that we were talking about. You're gonna have some skill sets you can double down on. You're gonna have some cool things that you can double down on, and you will be accepted in maybe that 5%, like you mentioned, like 5% of XYZ amount of people might like you, and then all of a sudden you're in the right room. But yeah, I'm gonna end this here. We've been going for a good amount of time now. I hope you guys, about 58 minutes now. Hope you guys have found a lot of value on this. I feel like we could continue on for another hour, honestly, but we don't want to do that, right? But I appreciate all the insight on all this. As I think that this will be a good episode for people. I think people will listen to this one. Especially from the people from this weekend. Given the fact that they know you, it'll be a fun one. And what'd you say?
So they know you.
Oh man, I appreciate it. But I think ultimately, if I can kind of boil this down into just like a quick thing, is like, look at what's beneficial to you, most importantly, and to your family or your very small circle, right? And really focus on like what's going to be beneficial to them. One of the things that I didn't bring up on this episode was one of the main reasons why I stopped being an entrepreneur in my space of fitness is because it was taking a lot of time and energy away from my family things. It was a lot of hard work on a day-to-day basis that, if anything, tore my relationship in my household with my kids, with my wife sometimes. And I'm not saying I'm shying away from hard work. It's just that vehicle at the time was hurting more what was around me rather than what I wanted. So diving into like a different career path, maybe what I need, you know what I mean? And by the way, I live a really great life. I have a great relationship. I'm not saying that none of that is happening. I'm just saying, like, there were some conversations where it's like, hey, maybe it's time to do this. Maybe it's time to do that, internally here at home. And that is ultimately how I start to make decisions, or how I've started to make decisions, whether or not I'm learning more, pivoting, or doing whatever. Is like having that conversation with the most important people in my life is what allows me to continue to either put a pause on learning more, or accelerate more, or get momentum anywhere else. That's what it ultimately boils down to me. But any last thoughts before we get off of this thing?
Nah, man, again, I just appreciate you taking the time and for linking up, man. Hopefully we can do some more together. But to anyone listening, I always tell folks, hey, it's all about doing that self-assessment and understanding what's valuable to you. I don't want any one person get caught up thinking they need to, make a copy of what someone else chose to do, or how they got to where they are, and think like, oh, I'm gonna do it that way, because usually it's not going to work out like that for you. And so you have to really understand, what are those factors in your life? What do you value more? Is it, is it time? Is it money? Is it flexibility? Is it, accomplishing something, or whatever the case may be, and then kind of work from there in order to build a life you want.
Yep, absolutely. Cool. All right, Potaholics, I appreciate you guys. I still love saying that name, Potaholics. Potaholics season 2. I appreciate it. Episode with Nate. If you're listening to this, do us a favor, share it. Tag Nate. Tag us if you listen to it, and if you can tell us what your number one thing was that you took away from this, that would be fantastic as well. All right, well, have a good day, Nate. Let's end this here. See you guys later.
Appreciate you.